All right, we're here for a special edition of EV Obsession. It is October 31st. I'm your co-host, Zach Marley, and joining me today is
The Macho Man. That's right,
Majo
baby.
Man.
The cream will rise to the top. We've done a special edition thing today. Thick, clean rips of cocaine ready for the show. It's all.
No, man. No, man. No, none of that. I am Zach Marley, long forgotten son of Bob Marley.
So this is why we get canceled. I'm so excited. All right.
Let's
We've
jump
got a
into the
lot
news. EV Obsession news.
all about electric vehicles, which
Yes,
the Macho Man approves of.
it is a very, very lovely topic.
It is. So today, this actually happened last week, but I've been traveling. I was in Phoenix, Arizona, doing some mountain biking with the guys at Electric about their new product that was announced last week, the X Peak. So we haven't talked about this yet. We're going to cover it today. BP has signed a contract rather to buy $100 million worth of Tesla charging hardware, and underneath those BP Pulse logos there is believed to be a Tesla Supercharger. This is a big deal, but it's a little bit light on details. We were estimating this was something in the range of 2,000 chargers based on a $50,000 total expenditure. But if I'm not mistaken, that's not completely clear, right?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it is not. We have an bit of an insider estimate on what these cost, but not necessarily what they're priced at from Tesla. And
Very good point.
yeah, so we don't really 100% know. What we know is BP is going to buy a lot of Tesla Superchargers. And
Right. Well, the other aspect of it is it could be buying battery packs. It could be buying battery packs to back up some of its existing hardware too, right?
yeah, I mean it would be a clever thing to do at stations if they have multiple superchargers. We don't really know. We don't know how many stalls per station BP is looking at, but I think, I mean, I for me, it comes across as a positive. We
It
have
comes across as a positive.
we have, I mean, it's very easy to be cynical and skeptical about oil companies and gas station networks, but if they see the future as EVs, they want to lead on it. They want to have Tesla superchargers that everyone can use. I mean, that's great. I mean, whoever's doing that work, good on them. They're not the ones exploring for oil and digging, pulling oil out of the ocean and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a plus. It's a positive. The more BP Tesla superchargers there are out there, the better. Of course, it's just an indication of how much that's kind of shift that we've seen started with Ford, of automakers adopting the NACS Tesla Supercharger standard, North American charging standard, has created change and continues to create big waves of change in the industry. And I think you've got some a really good op-ed we haven't published yet on this topic. I don't know if you want to save that for
Um,
another time.
I think I'll save it for another time. I do want to point out, though, there was a press release, and I don't think we covered it on Clean Technica. But there was a press release that came out of BP in the UK in January of last year, January of 2022. And BP found
So
in its
almost 2 years
studies,
ago.
almost 2 years ago, yeah, that they found in the UK that their EV charging stations individually were more profitable, operated on a higher margin than their gas pumps. So, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're making more money on electricity than they are on gasoline? Absolutely not. What it meant was that they were seeing sort of a retail halo effect, that people who came to the BP Pulse stations to plug in for a fast charge were more likely to come into the store, spend more time in the store, and they were ultimately more profitable customers than the people who just bought gas and left because it was quicker, more convenient, whatever else. So, from that perspective, yes, absolutely, this is a positive, but this just makes perfect business sense. BP is looking at this from a purely capitalistic way and saying, look, EV buyers have higher household incomes, they're a more attractive demographic, and they spend more money inside our convenience stores, which obviously have a much higher profit margin than our gas pumps. So, of course, they're going to do this. They're ahead of the curve. They've got real data from the field that they've got, in the UK, they've got all of the Shell bought green lots, but they've got a lot of other North American data that they're buying from other sources. They absolutely are getting this right. And I think, it's worth pointing out that where there are gas stations, that does not necessarily mean that there is the electric grid infrastructure necessary to supply reliable, consistent, high-speed charging. So I think I'm onto something with the idea that a lot of this money is going to be spent on BESS, battery energy storage systems. And I think, Tesla has been an early leader in that. There's other companies, obviously, like Joule Power, FreeWire. I like Joule. I think Joule's doing a great job throughout Canada. And as well, now they're in 11 states with some NEVI spending. FreeWire, I believe, also is winning some contracts. So all of these companies are doing the right thing, and they're doing it with this battery backup system that's bringing a lot of electrical juice where it is needed and where adding to infrastructure is not necessarily feasible. So I think this is a great thing. It remains to be seen how it's going to play out, but I don't think this is the last $100 million order Tesla is going to see for ultra fast chargers. I think this is going to be the beginning of many and the first of many things for them.
Well, regarding margins, it's something we've said forever, and it's just got to be one of the most obvious things is if people are going to spend longer charging vehicles that have a higher average selling price, they're going to buy more stuff in your convenience store or your cafe. So,
yeah,
but
it's hard to get that data.
It's always been known too that, I mean, gas stations are not making money on the gas often. They often have thin to no margins on the gas, and it's just on the convenience store purchase, which, everybody knows it's jacked up. But, you stop to get gas or charge, you want a snack or a drink, you pay a little bit more, and that adds up for, all the people going in there every day. So it just makes a lot of sense, and it's always made a lot of sense. And I mean, it's good to see capitalism working in the way of, stimulating more.
The way that it's supposed to. And while you're there, be sure to snap into a Slim Jim for the old macho man. That's right, brother.
Yeah. And it's exciting.
I'm going to keep doing that the entire show, by the way.
These will be rolling out starting in 2024. So it's not like a long out there, far away plan, which is also what's exciting for me.
This is hurtful.
This continues our discussion from last time.
Yeah, last time we were talking about a very frightening statistic. And if you're out there looking for things to be scared of this Halloween, this should do it. This is the scariest image you're going to see all day. Forget about baby corpses coming out of the ground to eat you. No, the fact that you're wearing a red, yellow, and green Speedo underneath that shirt.
With the
no, this chart. So for those of you who don't understand what this is a Google Trends chart. This is going to tell you what percentage of people basically are searching for a specific term. And if you look at this, the term here is car give back. What we were talking about last week was that we were seeing a record number of auto loans that were more than 60 days delinquent. And that number continues to grow because remember, an auto loan is not necessarily like other loans. It doesn't come due on the 1st or the 15th. If you signed your papers on the 28th, you could very well have a car note that's due on the 28th. It just kind of works that way. So every day that number is getting higher. It was 6.8% of total vehicle loans are more than 60 days, more than 60 days delinquent. Today, it's like 6.9. In a couple weeks, it could go over to 7 if things don't change. And truthfully, wages are not going up. Cost of goods are not coming down. There's not a real whole lot on the horizon that's going to tell us that that's going to come down. And this is a different thing. This is Google Trends. And what we're seeing is that the search term, give car back, is at an all-time high. That means since Google began recording our search terms all the way back in 2004, there has never been a higher amount of searches for this term. Not during the 2008-2009 crisis, which was about 4.5%. This is a record high number of people who are delinquent on their vehicles and who may very well be forced to repo their car, quote unquote, give it back to the bank. And this is something that you guys, if you're listening to this, you should really know this. And I'm not trying to tell you not to pay your loans. That's not what I'm saying. You should absolutely pay your loans. But don't, if you give your car back to the bank, they still hit you credit. They still crucify you on your credit scores. Don't do that. Don't just call and give it up. Keep driving it. Keep going to work. Continue doing what you're doing until someone basically calls you and tells you we're coming to take this thing, and then try to renegotiate, try to refinance, try to do something.
Disclaimer, we're not lawyers.
We're not lawyers. We're not lawyers, but
This is
there's
not
this
legal
idea.
advice.
No, but there's an idea out there, and I hear it a lot, that if you call and give back the car to the bank, that it doesn't hurt your credit as badly as a repossession.
Is that trending on TikTok? Is that why this is?
That's not true.
Is that why this is building?
I think so.
You think this is
I think it's
spreading across social media as a myth?
It is. I've definitely seen it. I've definitely seen it on TikTok in between, mechanical bull riding videos and go-kart tuning videos. So I've definitely.
Randy Savage.
That's right. Oh, dude, there's a lot of vintage wrestling on my feed. It's pretty cool. I got this Kerry Von Erich thing going right now. It's so.
Macho Man, Randy Savage in the house.
But the reality is, a lot of people are struggling right now financially. They're looking for answers. They're looking for ways to cut expenses. And they all seem to have this idea in their head that they can give the car back. It doesn't work that way. Even if you have it detailed and cleaned and you bring it back and you give them the keys and you say, thank you very much, Mr. Banker, I won't be needing my car anymore, they are still going to hit you on the credit. So the best thing you can do is keep trying to find a better job or changing your scenario, man.
As someone not in this industry who has never really thought,
but I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, as someone not in the industry like you have been, like in dealership and all that stuff, and not having thought about this much, I feel like if I was like, oh, I can't make my payments anymore, I would be sweating, freaking out, and thinking, what if I just give the car back? What do I get for that? How does that? I would just naturally assume that's the best way to go. I think. It's just like,
and
you would think, oh, if then it's still worth however much, and I'll be okay, and whatever. I mean, obviously I'd be sweating bullets just thinking about this situation, but it's legitimately very scary to look at this search trends bar chat graph, and with the context of what we discussed last time, frankly, we're at red flag territory for an auto finance crisis.
We are way past red flag territory. The red flag should have
fake
happened.
Wrestling territory.
Dude, we're on the ground. The Legion of Doom is marching up the side. An Ultimate Warrior has betrayed us.
You're very good with the voice.
Looking good for the Macho Man. Sure. I learned how to speak English watching professional wrestling on USA Network. So
really?
Trust me when I tell you. I know exactly what I'm talking about.
You have the voice down.
Oh yeah, these people, these characters were like a key part of forming my personality. That and the original Patrick Swayze Roadhouse, and the Ronda Rousey version would have been good too. I wish they had made that, but that's a different conversation.
Well, I think the broader economic story here is what's important in the broader human story, but I think we have to acknowledge there's got to be a significant portion of these people who are in Teslas. Are in other EVs, but particularly Teslas, because there was the known Tesla stretch where people were buying more expensive cars than they ever would have because they wanted a Tesla. Sometimes they had the money, they just never would have considered doing it. Sometimes they're pinching pennies to make it happen. So there's got to be a number of people in that boat, and if we do have a kind of crisis of if this builds, presumably there could be quite a lot of Teslas that are repossessed, and how does that affect the used car market or the new car market?
Well, it all comes back down to reporting, right? Because right now, who is financing those Teslas? If you have a Tesla lease, that's going through Tesla itself, right? Does Tesla have a captive finance branch?
It goes through banks. Like, oh well,
So there's a third party.
for a lease, I don't know.
Yeah.
They don't lease much. They're very few. There's very little leasing in the Tesla.
Yeah.
It's a
So
tiny
again, who's
percentage.
reporting it? So who would be reporting it? It would probably be, the private institutions
Like
that would
mine
be
is
doing that.
financed through a private bank.
Yeah. So it's all a question of reporting. We don't actually know. We don't actually know what the numbers are. So we have a 6.8% of higher than 60 days. We don't know the breakdown. We don't know how many of those are 120 days. We don't know how many of those are 90 days, but we do know that we're past 60 days. So I think, look, at the end of the day, it's this. If you have a real legitimate concern that you're going to lose your car, that you're going to get it repossessed, whatever else, number one thing you want to do is contact an attorney. Do not listen to us. Contact an attorney. The other thing you want to try to do is try to, just I know we're like opposed to this idea that the dealers are going to help you, but forget about the dealers. Go to CarMax, go to Carvana, find someone who's willing to write you a check for the thing and try to figure out the remaining balance, because the used car prices have in some cases held pretty steady. So some people who would have thought they didn't have equity 4 or 5 years ago might have equity today. But at the same time, they've been at record highs for the last 2-3 years. So, maybe you spent $25,000 for a Hyundai Elantra that was 3 years old, and that was a bad move.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what to tell you.
one of the big problems right now is specifically that the prices were very high a couple years ago and a year ago, I think, still. And
Yeah.
now the market has dropped a ton. So if you're looking to unload a car that you bought
It's rough.
at a high
But I'll tell
price
you this. There is a
and you're
silver lining
getting
here.
a lot less for it than you would hope, like that's just the market today. That's rough, but that's what it is. Like,
there is a silver lining here. And I'll find some of this and I'll put this in the show notes if you think it's worth it. But go out, do a Google search, do a Bing search if you'd like. We're not married to Google, but we love Google. Go out there, do a Google search, and there are now automotive financiers, automotive finance companies. They're not the captives, they're not the Ford Credit or things like that, but there are some third-party financing out there that do not require a closed car note. What does that mean? That means that they will still finance you if you have another open car note. Most banks will say, okay, you can only have one car on your credit or another car that you co-sign for. But for the most part, you only have one open car loan. A number of banks over the past 12 months have been dropping that requirement, possibly because they've known something like this was coming, but they've been dropping that requirement. So if you're in a real bad spot, again, talk to your lawyer, but you may be able to buy a car at today's prices, which are a little bit deflated, get yourself into a more reasonable payment that you can comfortably make before the nastiness hits your credit in a bad way that you can't fix for several years. And again, this is not advice. The advice is go talk to a lawyer. These are things that you should ask your lawyer about. Think of it that way.
yeah, what's on your arms, your wrists? I didn't see that. You can't see that.
Macho Man wears
Look at that.
wristbands.
Very
You need
good.
that to keep it supple,
Very
pinball
good.
wizard style.
And if you are in the situation where you have to sell your car and start using robotaxis, I'm not sure if that's going to work out financially, but we are making a very strained segue into the next story list. So
I would have gone with, if you are having trouble making ends meet and you decide to drive for Uber, the giant corporate monstrosity that is Uber is going to, farm out your job there to Waymo.
Yeah, that won't last long. No,
it just gets worse and worse.
No, well, the situation is not that dramatic for Uber, because this is not in most markets, of course, but there is the story that Waymo is you can now use Waymo robotaxis in the Phoenix Uber network. So I guess we should have seen this coming. Maybe it could have come a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, if you need an Uber ride in Phoenix, you might now get a Waymo robotaxi, or I assume you have to like specifically.
From the image, it looks like they offer it to you, and you can decline it. You can say like, no thanks. But on the one hand, you get to drive around in a Jaguar, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, I would definitely, it was like, if they're like, hey, you want to ride in the Waymo? Like, yeah, let's try it out, So it's cool. I mean, it's an indication to me that Waymo is not expanding its user base as much as it would like. So it's got to go to Uber for more business. It's also just a natural link up. Maybe they're seeing, let's see how this works. Maybe we should just roll out Waymo in other markets like this instead of trying to do it ourselves. And we just have the vehicles. We have enough on our plate. It's definitely a question of like when or how Waymo would ever get profitable. But it's an interesting and cool partnership. And yeah, anything else to add on that before we move to another?
Yeah, I want to put this out there, and I want to say that to me, I am reading this as a vote of no confidence from Uber in Tesla. About a year ago,
Oh yeah,
and I don't have the article in front of me, but about a year ago, you wrote an article about Uber, like Uber starts a robotaxi service or whatever, and you were talking about Uber's CEO saying that he would buy all the robotaxis Tesla could make.
That was like 7 years ago. Travis Kalanick, when he was
Great.
he was founder
buy,
CEO, he offered to buy. Yeah, it was like what, 7 or 8 years ago.
I don't know. I thought it was more recently than that, but I
No.
know he's not the CEO anymore.
No, it was like, it was way back. It was like
right.
around 7. I think around 7 years ago. And
even more
Elon
hilarious.
like had some joking like, haha, no way, you know, we'll do our own network. I think that's when the idea of a Tesla network came up more for Tesla. But
well, at the end of the day, here we are at the end of 2023, very nearly 2024, and the number of Tesla robotaxis on the road remains steadfastly, firmly, and confidently at zero.
Zero man.
Zero man. So that means GM is ahead of Tesla. That means Jaguar. That means Chrysler Pacifica. That means Waymo. That means Cruise.
Well, people would argue they're not ahead because they're still not profitable in their business model, and that no one's really ahead until they're going to be profitable or have a route to profitability. And
would those people be heavily invested in Tesla
and mass scale? I mean, I'm not advocating for Tesla being ahead in that. I think that's the argument. I do think I'm just very curious if Waymo sees a path for profitability, but certainly Uber, I think, has stepped up and said repeatedly they want to be leaders on robotaxi deployment, and you know, they don't want humans working for them.
No, and that's a fair point. Uber does not want humans involved.
They've had enough of that. The fights with taxi driver unions and protests in various countries, the labor laws in California, the low wages that people complain about, giving Uber a bad name. I mean, none of it helps Uber really. They're just squeezing people to make a buck, and they would love to jump into robotaxis as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I think the other question is, as this is happening, Cruise, which is probably Waymo's biggest, most credible rival, has pulled its robotaxis off the only
thing, before we move to the next story, I would just end with, a question. Do you think we could, down the line, have an Uber Waymo network where it's just mostly Ubers and Waymo vehicles, and I mean, Uber using Waymo vehicles, and like city after city, that's what it is. That's how Waymo grows and gets profitable. That's how Uber grows. I think it's possible. I mean, I don't necessarily think I wouldn't bet money on it, but I think it's definitely a possibility, a real possibility.
I think the bigger question is what, because Waymo, if I'm not mistaken, Waymo's the one owned by Google, right?
Yeah, it's like I think it's still a full subsidiary of Alphabet.
Of Alphabet, right.
Alphabet.
That's so. What a name, exactly. All right, so Waymo is still a full subsidiary of Alphabet, right? I think the bigger question here is, what does Waymo actually want? Are they looking for dollars and cents of selling the rides and the ride sharing is profitable, or are they looking for the data? Are they looking for the data of where people go, how they shop? Are they collecting the data? Because the cars are going to be equipped with a mobile hotspot that you can connect your Wi-Fi or whatever else. Are they going to then be collecting that data that is streaming over that network? Are they collecting your biometric data when you get in with your Apple Watch or your Samsung Watch? I think these are sort of the larger questions here. And I think that those are maybe more of the things that Google is interested in, especially as we start getting into like Project Gemini and their real big AI push, and their research on digital twins and things like that. I think what we're talking about in terms of profitability has to be a little bit different in the context of Google, or the context of Alphabet rather. So I think this idea of profitability is not the right one. It has to be a wider scope than traditional, the cost of operating these cars are X and the money that we get from customers is Y, and that makes us profitable. What are we selling the data for? What information are we gleaning from that data? And how effective is our marketing going to be without that data? The other thing too to look at is you can use a lot of this stuff for identity resolution kind of things and avoid double ad spends, which I think is going to be a huge concern for Google going forward, because they're, especially as iPhones and iOS kind of disable that tracking, and General Motors and goes into its own operating system that is not iOS or Android friendly. I think you're going to see a lot more as this sort of digital feudalism and walled gardens start to kind of take over all these different platforms. You're going to see the need to really isolate people and get their information kind of become more important than it is today, especially as more and more states start to pass consumer privacy and data privacy laws. So I think this is really what this play is. This is understanding where people go, why they go there, and trying to put it all together in a way that they are no longer able to do because so many people are going off the grid in terms of search with browsers like Brave, DuckDuckGo, and simply just turning off their tracking cookies. So I think this is a big deal, but I think it's a data play.
So now we move on to Cruise. So you were saying, at the same time as Uber is progressing, Waymo is progressing with Uber and still operating in California, we have this story.
Yeah, we have, so here's what happened. Basically, there was a couple of accidents, especially one where a woman was pinned underneath a Cruise and was apparently dragged, depending on who you believe, 15 to 30 feet underneath the vehicle. It had realized that there was a problem. It pulled over, hit the flashers, and it just dragged this woman that it had run over. And with the ensuing investigation, it appeared as if Cruise might have failed to report a number of other accidents in the way that it was supposed to. And
well, in this case too,
these are all allegations, right?
We talked about this accident right after it happened, and
we did.
The initial story was that a human-driven car hit a pedestrian. That pedestrian got knocked in front of the Cruise vehicle, and so then the Cruise vehicle had no time to brake and hit the person, and they died. What we found out more recently is reportedly that this lady ended up under the Cruise vehicle, and the Cruise vehicle kept driving, not realizing it was dragging a woman 15 or 20 feet. And that's potentially what killed her, not the impact. I'm not really clear on that. But yeah, it's a kind of situation where, would a human do that, first of all? And sad to say, some would. They would just be like, hey, I'm just going to drive until this thing falls off. Or, hit and run. They would just try to get out.
Yeah. Or they would
on the other case,
natural thing
once you've hit someone, you just stop, and you're not going to try to drive again. You're going to, as long as you're not like a hit and run type of driver.
But 100%. But they could just do a very natural thing and say, I've obviously hit something, but my car is still going forward. It wasn't some crazy impact, as it wouldn't be if you hit somebody that was just, in the road. It probably wouldn't feel that crazy, and just say, okay, I'm going to pull over at that spot up there that's 15 feet away. I think a lot of people, if there's a car right next to you, you can't pull over. You're going to go forward and pull over. I don't know that this was a crazy failure on behalf of Cruise. I just think it was one of those things that it was bound to happen, and it happened. And now the entire program is under extreme scrutiny because of it, as it should be, right? Like, I don't think we want robotaxis running us over.
Yeah, and there's always been the question, like, okay, it's fine and dandy as long as they're not killing people. But what happens with robotaxis when one of them ends up killing someone? Or, which just statistically you knew would happen. I mean, it's just
Sure.
with freak accidents. I think what's quite was maybe unseen and dramatic about this is the way it happened. Like the way, I mean, first of all, it wasn't Cruz that initially hit the person, so that's explains how it happened. But
Right.
then the fact of someone getting dragged, I mean, this is just like, this is in a special territory of car accidents and fatalities. I think like it's a different thing to think about. And the fact that potentially the car was acting like a stupid robot, dragging a human when a human wouldn't obviously do that. But again, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of gray areas. It's 15 to 20 feet. So, I mean, is it a case where it happens so quick and the car, I mean, you can go 15 feet quite quickly before registering, oh, I have a problem, stop. I mean, it's not like you immediately stop when you notice that something's dragging. It's, I don't know, it's a hard situation, but it's, well, there's a couple of interesting things here. One, Cruz tweeted, the most important thing for us right now is to take steps to rebuild public trust. Part of this involves, I find it a little bit weird. It's the most important thing is to rebuild public trust rather than like improve safety. It's like we need to fix our image, not like we need to make sure this doesn't happen again, which I think was a very weird PR statement. Part of this involves taking a hard look inwards and at how we do work at Cruise, even if it means doing things that are uncomfortable or difficult. So,
Yeah, I agree with you. That sounds weird.
well, the latter part though, it's like it looks like they're looking at what, kind of a whole internal audit of what they're doing and how they avoid stuff like this. But the first part is like it's like it's weird.
I think that, this is a crew of people who truly believe that an autonomous vehicle is going to be safer than a human driver. There's a whole lot of people who
Yeah.
fall into that category that they just believe, like, oh, autonomous. Yeah, robots don't make mistakes. They always follow the rules. They do the programs. And they, and again, we've talked about this before, how I don't think that that is a real appreciation for how much math and how many variables and truly how good humans are at driving. And I think, it's just a different way of looking how these things work. So some of this might mean that they have to look at a difficult truth and say, like, man, robots really aren't as good as driving humans. But I will also say, and I dropped this into our Google chat here, there was an article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. US pedestrian deaths are at the highest level in 41 years.
Yeah.
More than 7,500 people were struck and killed by vehicles in 2022. That's a huge number. It's a number that seems to be only increasing as more vehicles, go out there and we get bigger and heavier SUVs and things like that. So it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a scenario that's getting better. So,
Yeah.
when you have 1 to 7,500, it doesn't seem like they're that bad. And I think also they have to be very careful in their statement because they don't want to admit fault here.
Yeah, yeah. I would, well, so there's two more things with this. One, their second, that was the first of three tweets. Their second tweet said, in that spirit, we have decided to proactively pause driverless operations across all of our fleets while we take time to examine our processes, systems, and tools and reflect on how we can better operate in a way that will earn public trust. So they proactively suspended, but they have been since then suspended by the state. So I don't know how much of this was them trying to avoid being suspended and having the black mark of kind of, oh, you're in trouble, more like, oh, we're being proactive. So I don't really know what's going on there. And they said this isn't related to any new on-road incidents and supervised autonomous vehicle operations will continue. That's just strange. I'm like, what do you mean new? Like beyond the one that we're all talking about? We think it's the right thing to do during a period when we need to be extra vigilant when it comes to risk, relentlessly focused on safety and taking steps to rebuild public trust. Again, so rebuild public trust, not, I mean, whatever. You don't need to include that. Like that's your own, You need to tell yourselves that. You need to talk about that internally, but you don't need to tell people, hey, we're trying to rebuild public trust by talking about safety. Just talk about safety. Dang it.
Just
So
talk about, well,
the
again,
other thing
I
that
think it's a liability issue.
the thing that I find a little bit surprising, I'm not really sure. I would expect California to suspend Waymo's operations at the same time, because I know they're different, but in the case of that kind of incident, like what if it was a Waymo vehicle? Would it have done the same thing? We don't know. So like why would they be suspended, but then not all robotaxis be suspended while they investigate? Like you can do a test with a Waymo, like like what would happen if a Waymo accidentally ran over someone and didn't see it, and would they drag it 15 feet? I mean,
well, I mean,
I don't know. I feel like that I'm just a little surprised they would suspend one. I mean, I know it's the one that did it, but still, like I would think they would suspend both of them.
that's, oh God, that's so interesting, right? Who built that in Arizona of all places, right? There was a woman a couple of years ago, I want to say 2017, 2018, who was struck and killed by an autonomous car. It was a self-driving Uber. Was it a Waymo?
Yeah,
So,
I think so. Yeah, it was
so
Waymo.
the company that did actually hit and kill someone is not banned. The company that
Yeah, that's weird, huh?
that's I
Yeah,
wonder
well,
I wonder how much of it has to do with the fact that Cruise is based in Michigan and Google is based in.
I don't know, but it's just it's an interesting situation how we're navigating this. And
Yeah.
speaking of autonomous vehicles, we have the first commercially approved autonomous electric aircraft in the world. EHang has been approved for commercial services for autonomous electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft commercial services in China.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's electric autonomous air taxis, and
Cool.
I don't know. That's a big. I mean, I think we sort of brushed over this. A lot of people brush over this because there's so many EVTOL announcements, and there's so many demos and so many, claims of like the first and the best and blah
Right.
blah blah. So
Well,
it's sort
it's
of like,
like
oh,
we have the
another
first one that,
announcement.
yeah,
But this is
yeah, exactly.
actual approval for commercial service. So they're actually going to start flying people around and charging them money in China. Of course, this is a very different market, but it's happening. And I mean, where does it happen next? For sure, the UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi is going to want to get in on that. There's going to be other places, Singapore, perhaps.
Korea, Singapore for sure.
So and parts of the US. So I don't know. It's a momentous announcement. It is interesting. They have if something goes wrong, they have people on the ground in a like hub who can control the vehicle. So they have
Like a
backup
drone
humans.
pilot.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I think
Obviously,
that would make me feel better in a way that, yeah, I think that makes me feel better. Because I don't know that I would jump into one of these things. But I think so. Let's talk about this. We're just talking about how I was on here saying that I feel like people are better drivers than a lot of other people give them credit for. I think that an EVTOL in a vertical three-dimensional space is going to be much safer and much easier to navigate for than a car. I think it's going to be a lot easier to program an effective, safe EVTOL than it is to program a safe, effective robotaxi. Not because flying is easier, but because the sight lines are better, the variables are less, and you're not going to have a kid chasing a basketball out of a 60-story window. Like, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to have cyclists shooting out between cars. It's a much more sedate and serene environment. I think they're going to do a lot better. To your point about, we almost brushed over this, there's a ton of EVTOL news. We talked about something last week that was very similar. It was like, this one company in California has the first one of these that's approved in the US, in the state of California, FAA approval. And there's a lot of this going on. EHang
But
has been
yeah,
operating demo flights for years and years. They haven't had any incidents. It's great stuff.
yeah, but there's a difference between demo flights, approval to test, and actual approval to carry passengers and charge them money. Like that's
Yes.
where we go into business. So I think that's why it's notable, especially here's a EHang video. I think this is what you said is really important to note. Like, because I mean, I naturally think, and I think most people naturally think, gosh, these dreads are itchy, that they're only 20 years old. This is
It's so
that
gross.
that you know, it's much harder to fly. How can this be approved and safe? But obviously, as you can see in this video, as you talked about, you know, you don't have a million different vehicles and pedestrians and animals like crossing your path when you're flying. You have potentially birds, but they're going to stay out of your way. And, you know, you're going to have designated areas you can fly where you're not going to be crossing paths with a with a Boeing 757. So I think it does make more sense as a safe option. But
Yeah.
I mean, the concern, of course, if something goes wrong, you land to you go to the ground. In a car, you're already on the ground. And then the other
car, you're
thing,
already on the ground. Yes.
yeah,
That is
and the
how
other,
that works.
yeah, the other thing is with, again, profitability, making money. I mean, this doesn't look like the most economical way to get from point A to point B. So either they charge a lot of money for it. I mean, there's arguments that it can be, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to be at a very high level of deployment in which things get a lot more complicated. It's a lot more complicated to have a million of these flying around your city than 100. So I think it's fascinating. I'm very curious to see where it goes, metaphorically.
What you're seeing here in the video where there's a bridge, this highlights some of the best use cases for this, honestly, because
Yeah,
there are situations where this is going to be significantly faster and significantly more effective than, for example, getting an ambulance to the bottom of that ravine to pick up somebody who's sick and getting them all the way back up to the top to a hospital. Something like this can do that in a matter of seconds. So there are situations out there where time isn't just money, time is life. Time is the difference between life and death. And for those things, we shouldn't really even be considering the question of efficiency and cost. We need stuff like this kind of infrastructure needs to exist, and making it more accessible just means that it's going to be there for the people who need it when they need it. And does that mean there's going to be a couple of rich jerks who don't have to sit in traffic anymore? Yeah, that's kind of just how this is. But that also means that, grandma's going to make it to the hospital this time instead of 5 years ago she wouldn't have been able to. You know what I mean?
well, I think it's another case too of, if you start at the top of the market, you can become profitable and grow. And that was Tesla's approach. That's how Tesla survived and grew. In this case, 100%, if you put these in the right locations, you're going to have rich people who will pay whatever they have to pay to use this.
That's
and
right.
potentially you can make a profit on this before too long, and then slowly start to scale up, bring costs down, just natural laws of, supply and demand, and cutting costs, learning curves.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's exciting. I'm very curious to see this start happening outside of China as well, but it's unsurprising that China is the first place it's happening. You have any final comments on it? I was trying to find this specific text for the person on the ground who can remote control it. Like, if also they have 8 or 16 propellers powered by 16 independent electric motors. So there's a kind of, if one of them goes down, the vehicle can still fly.
Okay, well, you can get in it and tell us all about it.
No. All right. Okay, so we saw it. It's beautiful. I mean, who wouldn't want to fly in it here, right? Well,
I mean,
my wife wouldn't. 100%.
I was gonna say I'm not getting in it. I don't care where you're gonna take. Let's go over Niagara Falls. No,
Oh, I love.
no
Look
thanks.
at that, Joe. Come on. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I also got to give credit. I mean, this is amazing in my opinion. Joe had horrible food poisoning this weekend.
in
And
a
he
fever
he
dream,
pulled
I imagined
yeah,
this.
he pulled a bit of a Michael Jordan here. I mean, it might maybe slightly different level of performance and and importance, but in the middle of his food poisoned fever dreams, he found this interesting story and he sent it to me in chat. And this morning, when we were getting ready for the show, he had no recollection of this, didn't know anything about it. He was like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah,
Never
first
seen it
time I
before.
ever saw it.
So it might not be level of Michael Jordan winning an NBA Finals poisoned by Utah pizza delivery men, but it is a pretty cool story. So what is happening here?
So this was somebody put
Or should I?
in.
Or should did you figure it out yet?
Oh no, I read the article. I read the
Okay.
I read the explainer. So
Yeah.
somebody put in an AI and they asked an AI to create an image of a Tesla from the 1950s. And I think this is just great because Teslas have kind of funky headlights. This has some real funky headlights. It's got the mouth, which is it's not really a grill, it's like a crease. That front character line
Yeah.
that you see in the second generation Model S and the Model 3s. I think it's just perfect. I love the corner lights. I think the wheels look great. The whole thing looks good. And I especially love the interior, how they made it look like a big iPad, even though there's no touch screen there. It's so slick.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
notice.
this is great. But the
I didn't
best
notice
part of
that.
this, oh,
Oh.
really? I'm going to blow your mind right now. You ready for the best part? There's no stocks.
Oh my.
There's
Look at
no
that.
stocks to control the wipers or the turn signals. They they're just not there. Like they don't
That's
have
funny.
stocks. It's got like weird buttons on the steering wheel, but it's just so good, man. Whoever wrote these prompts, whoever directed this AI,
Well,
really, really good at this.
also, I use DALL-E and it's horrible in my opinion. I hate using DALL-E. I much prefer Midjourney, which does much nicer, but it's very hard to get really what you want. So yeah, whoever did the prompts for this, I wonder how many iterations they went through, like how many options
Oh, sure.
they went through before they found this one, and there was like this is it.
But
But
that's
it's really
that's how
good.
you use that tool. You sit through it, you fight with it, and you get it until it does the thing. This is just absolutely perfect. The thing that blows my mind about this and that makes it kind of the funniest to me is that it has exhaust pipes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. Like this, the original Model S didn't have a center console. So I would think like if you go back, there
Sure.
wouldn't be a center console, in an old Tesla if it was electric. But
If it was
clearly,
electric.
but clearly, yes, yeah, clearly you have to have like, I mean, the DALL-E is going to be like, well, what did an old car look like? And they're not going to leave out a console. But at the same time, I mean, it's actually still, it's not. I don't know. There's so many fascinating elements of it.
I think it's great.
I
I
I think
really
that
like this.
the license plate is that it looks like it says earlier, but
Oh, I don't know. I don't
but I
think it
wonder if
actually
it's been
shows.
modified too, because DALL-E doesn't deal with text well. Like,
I mean, that doesn't look that good to me.
yeah, but their text is like jumbled mess. So like having Model 3 written here and Tesla, I wonder if they photoshopped it afterward as
Mm.
well. But in any case, it's one of
I
the
think it's a
first things
huge
that
win.
came
It's
to
a big
mind
winner.
is some rich guys could go ahead and build this. Like they could go build vintage Teslas, you know. I think they would
Dude,
be
we could build
legally
these.
able to.
We
Joe,
could
we
build
have a new
these.
business.
We're done. We could do these.
Yeah, you could
We'll build
really
them off of
build vintage
Volkswagens or
Teslas and
something.
sell them for probably a fortune.
I don't know who.
I mean they're not real, so who would really want if it's but at the same time people would be like that's I don't know. I don't know if they would I don't know how well they would sell, but I think there would be enough
Yeah,
fascinated buyers.
I think
What
we'd
is
sell
going
a
on with
bunch of them and they'd get repossessed.
what's going on in the door here? Is this something or is it just DALL-E creating weird stuff? The
I
like
mean, it could be
by the
both. It
steering wheel here.
could be both. I don't. I
But
don't
is
think
it
it's actually anything. No, I've never
yeah.
seen a mechanism that looks like that. I also
I
don't know why you'd need two armrests on the door.
Minimalist Tesla to armrest.
Yeah.
This is before
16
Elon's
cup
time,
holders.
before Tesla was a minimalist company.
Yeah, I think that's
This is why Elon made it so minimalist, because he was like, this is too many buttons and armrests. We got to clear this out.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the the old steering wheel, the gauges.
I love this comment from Evelyn that it would be cool to have like an old style CRT color TV in there, like playing I Love Lucy or something. Even black and white would be even better.
Yeah.
I like that.
Is there
I
anything?
think this was a really great way to round off the show, man. This is such a fun thing, and we should do more fun stuff. This is great.
I do think the front is brilliant and like really attractive. But
yeah, this is great.
We also did have the you had this story as well. The BYD Song L.
I think that's impressive.
Which is priced at $34,000.
Yeah, and it goes on sale today. So you can buy this today. And if you're looking at that and you're comparing it to a Model 3, I think that's a solid competitor. And BYD is the company that's gunning for Tesla. Let's make no mistake here. It's got a minimalistic interior, but it's got enough buttons to be a little bit different. It's got a little bit more conventional, what do you call it? Vents happening there.
Yeah, it's got,
I don't know. It's a nice looking car.
Behind the steering wheel, you have the second screen, which you only get in a Model S, much more expensive Model S. You don't get it in the Model 3.
And you get stocks for the wipers like a normal car.
Yeah. And BYD is like inches away from passing Tesla in quarterly BEV sales. They lead in plug-in vehicle sales. I love
the faceted shifter.
I'm not a fan of the interior looks like a mixture of cheap and ugly and new and Tesla-like. I've seen a lot of BYDs I love, and this I do not. I think it's really a weird amalgam of and the vents look like, are there other vents there? Because those are small and just on the side there. I don't. Are there also
there's vents in the center console under the dash, and then it looks like there's vents.
Okay,
it looks like there's vents along the. I'm pointing, like you can see what I'm pointing at, along the base of the windscreen there to face upward. I disagree with you.
This thing, it's like very BMW iX, like this plastic crystal shifter. Which again, I'm not a fan, but
I disagree. I really like the mix of the leather and suede. I think that's a very high-end touch. I think when you're in there and you're sitting again, there's leather and suede there. That's undoubtedly Alcantara. So that's going to be just a real nice luxe kind of feel to it. You've got, what looks like a 7 or 8 way adjustable seat there. That looks decent, man. And again, these aren't press photos. These are just somebody is snapping these photos in a parking lot. And it looks
well, it's from the BYD Weibo account. So it's like it's BYD pretending to be guerrilla photos.
Yeah, exactly. They're pretending, because that's what gets spread and that's what leaks. Yeah.
Or they got them from I don't know. I mean, they're obviously, but I do think the back seats look much more comfortable. Yeah, if that's Alcantara, it would feel very nice. Especially, I'm just not a fan of the mixture here of that and the leather. I get it. Like it looks like it's forced. It looks like it's like they're trying to do multiple things at once in this car, and I'm not a fan, but I 100% believe it will sell in very high volume, and that they know their market in China, and that they know this will sell. So
I think it works. I think you're going to see this car when we finally get production images. You're going to see this interior in like a light gray or like a natural tan leather, and you're going to like it a lot better than with the yellow or lime green contrast stitching suede and leather. I think it's a color palette thing. But I think you're going to be a believer when this thing really comes out. It's got a lot of Mustang Mach-E and like Lamborghini Urus styling references here. The roof has that fastback design where they hide it with black paint the way the Mach-E does. It's got those big fake vents in the rear that makes it look kind of like a Lotus, kind of like a Lambo, even though they don't really serve any purpose. It's got
Yeah, I
the
didn't think
pop-up
about
rear wing. I like
I
that.
didn't think about that before you mentioned, but it does very much have that Urus, Lamborghini Urus. I don't know how you pronounce it. Look, like I can't think of anything that looks. I was thinking it looks a little bit more like a big Polestar, but that's a
Yeah,
much.
but it's not big. It's Model Y Mustang Mach-E sized. It's right there at the meaty part of the market. This is the car that I think they're going to try to really take on the Model Y with, and the price is right.
Yeah, 34,000. All right, well that's it. We're not going to talk about this, but it's a cool off-road solar
That thing
powered
is so
vehicle some Dutch
strange
students
looking.
built. It's very
Tomorrow,
very cool.
Zach
No, we're
Shahan and Joe Borras will be back. But until
possibly
then, trick or treat.
if your gut survives Halloween,
If you don't get canceled between now and tomorrow.
if your wife doesn't food poison you again.
Again. She's so excited she can see my abs again. It's gonna be great.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, she did it on purpose. She's like, I got to trim Joe down, make him
Gonna
sick.
lean him out for the big holiday Christmas photos. Exactly.
All right.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.